Hello and welcome to the CD Networks webcast, Faster Websites and Protection Against DDoS Attacks with Cloud DNS, featuring iOffer. Thank you very much for joining us. Our presenters today are Jeff Kim, President and COO of CD Networks, and Ryan Boyce, President and CEO of iOffer. Before we get started, I just wanted to let you know that you can enter any questions you may have into the Q&A section, and we will answer as many as possible at the end of the half hour. Also, please take our survey to the right of your console. That would be very helpful for us to know our audience. Now let me introduce Jeff Kim.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining our webcast today. Hopefully, we'll provide some very good information as well as some case study specifically on iOffer. So we'll introduce Ryan later on. A bit about CD Networks before we begin. We are a global cloud acceleration network, and our mission is to basically to leverage the internet to create an application delivery network, high performing, secure. We have been in operation for over 13 years. We have global offices everywhere, here in San Jose, London, Tokyo, Korea, Beijing, etc. We are trusted partners to our customers in local markets, and our true differentiator is actually that we're experts on extending into global markets. We have over close to 18,000 web properties, websites, web applications flowing through our network every day, and we conduct trillions of transactions each and every day. The obligatory sample customer slide, we serve customers across every major vertical, sector, region, and we've been partnering with with our customers for, again, over 13 years. We have financial trading institutions, gambling companies, gaming companies, media entertainment, e-commerce, travel and tourism, etc. Okay. Our reach, something that we're very proud of, we have 140 points of presence around the globe in over 80 cities, and this continues to grow each and every day. I know that this is kind of an eye chart, and you can't see the exact cities. You can feel free to visit our website and look at this for exactly the points of presence that we're in. Again, where we're really strong, of course, in areas like the Americas and Europe, that are really well connected, we're very strong there. But our true differentiator is pushing out into areas that your business is growing every day, into the emerging markets. So places like China, Russia, the Middle East, South America, every corner and nook and cranny of the world is where we're pushing into and deploying points of presence. Our entire suite of products, where we start and where we end. So we are not a compute environment. So we don't offer data center services. We don't offer a cloud compute engine. So we partner with those companies. But as soon as a bit or a byte leaves the compute cloud or data center, that's where we take over. So the internet is obviously a network of networks. It's congested and a lot of traffic. What we do is, in kind of layman's term, is operate expressways over the congested traffic to get your content, your applications to run as quickly as possible out to your end users, no matter where they are. So we have a big spectrum of different products that you can read there, but today's purpose is to really focus in on DNS and the value and the problems, challenges, and solutions specifically around DNS. Okay, so let's go a little bit about DNS. Many of you are probably very technical folks and already know this, so please bear with us as we kind of cover the basics. But just want to make sure that everyone is level set before we go into the content. So what is DNS? The simplest thing, it's an internet phone directory. Domain names become translated into IP addresses so that end users and browsers know where to go. So every single internet transaction interacts with DNS. Okay, so it is a core piece of infrastructure that the internet and every single website application is based on, and yet many people don't pay attention to it and haven't paid attention to it for many years. So we have kind of a build slide here of what's going on with specific DNS transactions. The user requests www.test.com to the browser. The browser goes off to a local DNS resolver who says, who is this IP address? Goes off to an authoritative DNS server who responds with that specific IP address, goes back to the browser, and then eventually goes to the origin website, the source website. Okay, there's actually more infrastructure in between that we can talk about later. There are things called recursive DNS servers that actually act as caches for DNS throughout the internet that eliminates all the transactions going back and forth. But it's actually a kind of a subsystem, another plumbing component of the internet that allows websites and applications to function. Okay, this kind of diagram depicts the basic flow of how a DNS transaction works. Okay, what our cloud DNS server does is actually focused on the authoritative DNS portion. There are other service providers out there like Google DNS and Open DNS, for example, that focus on the local DNS piece of the puzzle. We're specifically talking about being the authoritative DNS service for our customers, so that when someone reaches out and says, who is www.saxobank.com, we will go ahead and be the authority of that on the internet and respond with the appropriate IP address. All right, so why is DNS so important? Well, again, a lot of people don't look at this so critically just because it's so underneath the covers and it's part of the plumbing of the internet. But really, as this slide tries to cover, DNS is the grand entrance to your web kingdom. Before they come to your website with all your design and applications and all the things that you've invested millions of dollars into, they need to get to your site. And so that is why DNS is so critical for your infrastructure. All right, so let's cover a little bit of DNS failures. Okay, and this has started since the start of the internet. So going back all the way through time, you can see there have been major DNS outages. The DDoS attacks have actually always existed, but have been increasing as of late. And when those things happen, website is unavailable. If the DNS is slow, it's just because it's congested or overloaded, or we'll talk about in a couple slides where you only have one point of presence, and all your end users, no matter where they are in the world, have to traverse the internet and get to your single DNS server sitting somewhere. Web performance is slow. And of course, if DNS is unreliable, then users are directed to incorrect websites or aren't directed to your web application at all. So there's been a lot of news. Last year was when GoDaddy's DNS outage took out thousands of sites, and I think it was just last week when there was a DDoS attack on Spamhaus, which is a major spam service provider, currently heralded as the largest DDoS attack in history, that crippled or slowed down a lot of websites and web properties that depended on Spamhaus. So this kind of critical element of the internet can no longer be ignored, and providers like us are getting the message out that DNS is something that you must pay attention to. All right, why is DNS difficult to build? It seems like a simple enough thing, right? You take a human-readable name like www.customer.com and translate it into an IP address. Well, it's difficult to build just because of all of these things. You need to have, it needs to be highly available, high-performing, reliable, secure, scalable as your business grows, and of course you want some reporting and analytics. I won't go into the details there. You can read them for yourself. But included with all of these things that you're looking for, you want it to be low cost, of course. You don't want to be spending, top dollar on this, even though you should be. Okay? The problem with other solutions. So let's go into how people typically address this, and that's one of the reasons for the survey questions out there. We're curious to see how the audience is currently handling their DNS services. A lot of folks do it in-house, and in fact, 15 years ago, this was probably the only option. So back then, people would just take an open source version of Bind, tell their IT staff to go ahead and deploy a server or two, and that would be their DNS server. So when you do it in-house, you need the expertise to do this, and oftentimes this is overlooked. Like again, just set up a DNS server, and having been in this space for quite a while, you don't know how many times this critical component is misconfigured or has poor setup or isn't secure. I would say 70% of the times when we run into customers, there's something wrong with how they've configured their DNS. Scalability. Of course, when you're only doing or responding to a few transactions, then this isn't an issue. But as your website, web property, starts growing, this needs to scale. And so the initial investment that you threw out to have 2 DNS servers are no longer enough. And then you have to figure out how to scale this thing. And of course, performance. And I'll touch on this. I mean, we were working with recently a large enterprise consumer products good company. And they had their DNS infrastructure set up in the Midwest, and they had one point of presence. So they're a multi-billion-dollar company. End users really coming in from, in this particular case, Brazil, Russia, India, China, all going to their single POP in the Midwest to get their DNS resolved. So we initially interacted with them to try to accelerate their applications, but when we started doing performance tests and a consultative approach to where their application was slow, we found out that this DNS portion was actually one of the most slowest parts or components in their application. Okay, and then cost. Again, you have to deploy hardware and software. You need to put this in some rack. You need network. You need specialized personnel. So although it sounds easy to do it in-house, like the picture depicts on the left-hand side, the total cost of ownership increases as your business scales. Okay, a lot of folks then just go to their ISP. Okay, hey, I'm hosting it at this particular hosting provider or ISP. They offer free DNS or low cost DNS. Let's go ahead and do it there. Unfortunately, that's not their core focus, and so these problems exist: reliability, scalability, performance, security. In fact, what we're doing is actually partnering up with a lot of hosting providers and ISPs so that they can resell our cloud DNS solution. This is not an area of focus for them, and in fact, again, it does solve the problem that it's not a single server or 2 servers, but they are still a single point of presence. So that same problem that I described earlier, they're not deploying a distributed network of servers out there. Performance-wise, same issues, and then security-wise, we see this all the time. If one customer of that hosting provider ISP, let's say, gets a DDoS attack, then all the customers of that provider suffer. They're just not built to be able to handle the things that are out there today. Okay, so these 2 options are probably the most typical things that we see out in the marketplace today. So just to summarize the problems with the solutions out there, in-house, obviously the X's are areas where they're a bit poor performing: availability, performance, scalability, and cost. Whereas with your ISP, it may be cheaper in terms of cost, but then all the other criteria suffer there as well. Okay, so a bit about our Cloud DNS solution and what we offer. So what is our Cloud DNS? So it's cloud-based. We focus on the authoritative DNS service. So we will take that we will take on the authority of the resolution of your domain name as the authority. We're a globally distributed secure platform and have been for over 13 years. We use IP Anycast. We're completely outsourced, so it doesn't require any CapEx. You don't need to buy any hardware, anything of that. We have really highly intelligent web-based management and reporting and logging, failover policies for load balancing, and it's natively integrated with our CDN and our other services, which we won't highlight too much here, except one note: if you're using, let's say, another DNS provider and a different CDN provider, there's actually multiple DNS resolution lookups. Whereas with us, because it's natively integrated with our CDN, we can actually further optimize performance because it doesn't require additional lookups. And of course, we'll cover a slide on DDoS defense, and that's built into our solution. All right, so how global is our platform? So as we depicted, we have 140 points of presence around the globe for our CDN, and we have 48 POPs around the globe for DNS, and that continues to grow. As a CDN provider, it's actually just easier for us to deploy DNS in our network. We're not like other providers that have deployed a handful of DNS servers and haven't added any capabilities in a while. We continue to add this. We'll probably be closer to 60 POPs by the end of this year, and it'll continue to increase. Okay, and again, you'll see a list of different cities and points of presence around the globe there, and on our website. Oops, too bad. This is a real customer. I believe this is the one that I was talking about before, which was the Midwestern company, consumer products good. If you look, just on the DNS time alone, I think we're 3 times faster and more reliable than an in-house origin-based solution. Okay, so DNS performance does matter in your overall web performance. So let's talk a bit about DDoS. Okay. Where did that build go? Oh, it's missing. Okay, sorry about that, folks. Okay, so our DNS DDoS defense. So DDoS has been in the news quite frequently these days. In a nutshell, what it is overloading your internet infrastructure by just a variety of different things. There are layer 3, layer 4, layer 7 attacks. So there's a variety of different mechanisms, but all of them in a nutshell are doing one thing. They are taking your infrastructure and taking it past its capacity. Okay, so that valid users are unable to get to your website or your web application. So we won't be covering HTTP DDoS attacks here, where they're just attacking your web infrastructure or your web applications, even though that is a different service that we offer. Particularly here, we're talking about knocking out your DNS infrastructure by opening up so many connections so that your DNS servers cannot respond. And if they cannot resolve, if end users are unable to resolve how to get to you, then of course there's no way that valid transactions can happen. So typically, an attacker takes over a network of botnets or zombies or different servers out there, and then they open up connections to your DNS and again overwhelm it and max out connections so that they're unable to reach you. Okay. The interesting thing about this latest attack on Spamhaus actually was that it was further amplified by using these recursive DNS servers around the globe. So the attackers not only just used a zombie network or botnet network, they actually used valid recursive DNS servers to further amplify their attack on their target. So the bad guys are out there are finding new and interesting ways to do this, and so what we do is, again, we have on the right-hand side with us. Number one, we have, again, 48 points of presence around the world. Our DNS servers are out there. The first thing we do is absorb it. So we just have more capacity, right? More hardware capacity, more software capacity, more network capacity than any one of our customers can possibly have, just because we've sunk in all the CapEx and OpEx to be able to support the services. So the first line of defense is just absorption. Secondly, of course, is that we detect it. And so we have processes and policies in place where we work with our customers to detect technically that something is going on, and then we interface with the customers. God forbid that we start filtering out valid traffic just because one of our customers is having a super sale and they get a burst of traffic that's perfectly normal. That shouldn't be categorized as an attack. So absorb, then detect, and then again defend. There are a bunch of different mitigation tools, filtering tools, and defense systems that we have there. Not to highlight all of the the secret sauce we have there, but we actually, again, being a global platform, we actually have POPs deployed around the globe that are inactive, and their only purpose is to absorb and behave like a sponge for all of these different attacks. So that's one of the methods. We have dozens of other things that we do here, but again, it's about absorbing the attack, detecting what's going on, then filtering and defending, and then allowing the valid traffic to flow to our customer's origin. Okay, a bit about our web-based management. There are, we have a very sophisticated reporting analytics tab. You can go in, set up your zones through our UI, as well as you can do automated zone transfers, which is the normal thing that you do in DNS. We have a staging environment. You can actually go ahead and test things and then push them out into production, which our customers are very happy with. Automatic provisioning. Again, you can go to our UI, update your records, and you can. It literally pushes out to our network within minutes, if not seconds, fully at your control. And then, of course, extensive reporting capabilities. Where are your end users coming from? Where's your DNS traffic coming from? Again, detecting what's going on with your particular network. Okay, so to summarize, why cloud DNS? All of these things: higher availability, better performance, reliability, increased security, on-demand scalability. It's a completely outsourced solution, and of course, you maintain control and reporting, even though it's outsourced. So everything at your control. A bit about the competition. Many of you, again, are contemplating whether to go out. There are other cloud providers out there. We will highlight specifically Neustar Ultra DNS, who's actually one of the longest players in this space, highly respected. So just to get at the root, the heart of it, another eye chart here. Neustar has 16 points of presence around the globe. We have 48. They've had 16 points of presence. 16 points of presence for several years, and we specifically list out U.S., Europe, and then Asia. And so in the DNS space, POPs do matter. The more we have, the faster we can resolve requests, as well as the more we can more security and reliability that we have and scalability that we have. Okay, another comparison chart. The key things there are, we're a global service operator. We have security operations centers as well as network operations throughout the globe, and we're focused on web performance. And so we will continue to invest and grow this service line as our network expands. And then network comparison charts or performance comparison charts. Again, this highlights that the more POPs and the more performance, it shows up in performance. So as you can kind of see in the left-hand side of the chart, core areas like U.S. and Western Europe, we are very equal or do very well. But then the more emerging markets, is where we really differentiate ourselves in terms of DNS response. Okay, and our summary slide, really, if you're working with in-house, these days, really, you should get that out, and you need to take your DNS infrastructure as critical as it is, and put that into the cloud with a managed service provider. Going to your ISP is a good intermediate step, but it's not one of their core focuses. And so, again, that's why we're in this cloud DNS service business. This is something that we focus in on, and again, we handle billions, if not trillions, of requests, every day for our existing customers on this. So at this point, let me hand this over to Ryan, who leverages our cloud DNS service, and he'll be able to tell you about his business and what he's seen. Ryan, over to you.
Thanks, Jeff. Oh, thank you. So a little bit about iOffer. iOffer is an online marketplace. We've been in business over 10 years. Very similar to eBay. We have sellers and buyers from all over the globe. In the U.S., we are in the top 500 websites, and that's on Quantcast. You can check that. But the interesting thing about our traffic is the non-U.S. traffic makes up well over half of our overall traffic. So our global is by far a bigger chunk than in the U.S. And let's see, moving along. So yeah, just going over, reiterating the global customer base. We first approached CD Networks in about 2009, 2010. We had decent U.S. traffic, but we really wanted to push globally. The first thing we did was translate our site to make it available in the language that people can understand, and also do some pretty sophisticated currency conversions by auto-detecting where they're at. But the big problem that we had was we have one data center. And just to kind of reiterate Jeff's point, we had in-house DNS servers, but the biggest problem that we saw was we just had the one point of presence, and we wanted to expand globally. So this is a snapshot of some of the traffic reporting on CD Networks portal. And you can see some of our biggest areas. Obviously, U.S., I said, is the biggest single percentage of users. But number two is China. So the thing that we felt was really important that CD Networks offered was their presence in China and in Asia specifically, because it is our second largest country. And so as far as the cloud DNS piece goes, we've been using the cloud DNS piece for, I believe, 2 years now. And we're active. Our users are in over 120 countries, and that's on a daily basis. So we do have very significant global presence that needed to be addressed. And so the cloud DNS piece is just one piece that we're using. We actually use all four products from CD Networks. We're using the Dynamic Web Accelerator, which is kind of what Jeff highlighted about the making the congested lines of the internet less congested. We're also doing SSL offloading and the content acceleration too, so dynamic or static web acceleration. And so this next slide here, this is kind of our performance in China when we first switched over to and pushed everything outside of our data center and onto CD Networks POPs. And you can see that in July of 2010 is when we switched, and every single country was literally growing in relation to this chart. So we felt there was it made a big difference in our growth around the world. And as far as what Jeff was speaking about zone transfers, or let me take that one step back. We were a victim of a DDoS attack in late February this year. And they actually targeted our DNS servers that we had in our data center. But the cool thing was that because we were using Cloud DNS, they were able to essentially disable our local DNS servers, but those aren't public. So we're completely fine. So even though our data center and our network took a hit, our customers never even saw it. So it's a real-world example of kind of some of the benefits of using a distributed DNS solution.
Great. Thank you so much, Ryan, for your presentation. And we have a couple questions that have come in. First one is for you, Ryan. What regions of the globe have you seen the most growth in after implementing CDN and the DNS service?
I would definitely Asia, China being one big one. China, Hong Kong, Vietnam, Thailand, and then also almost every country in Europe. So those are the two largest single areas of growth that we've seen.
Great. We have a question for CD Networks. Can the CD Networks DNS service be purchased without the content delivery network?
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of customers actually come to us specifically just for that, and that it can be purchased separately.
Great. We've got more of a technical question. What does it mean to be an authoritative versus recursive DNS network?
Sure. Kind of address that a bit, but authoritative it just means that you are the single authority on the web that will resolve a domain name to an IP address, and that everything else, all the other different DNS infrastructure components will come to you or whoever this authority is to get the resolution. The recursive DNS servers behave like caches around the globe, so that local DNS servers, which are near client addresses, are allowed to go to recursive DNS servers as long as the TTL or time to live values are still valid and get responses from them, so that they don't have to traverse the internet and go back to the authoritative DNS servers. These things have been out in place since the beginning of the internet, and a lot of people are not focused on things like this, and so there's a lot of mistakes, today, on people's local DNS servers, recursive DNS servers, as well as authoritative DNS servers, just because people haven't paid enough attention to it.
And we've got one more question. It's a little bit technical, so I hope it can be answered here. How can the Anycast DNS improve response times for customers who are using their ISP DNS resolver and get answers from their cache? Is that something we can answer here? Or?
Let's take a look. Most customers, ISP.
I could take a stab at that.
Oh, great.
So even though you're using your ISP DNS resolver, that DNS server still has to reach out to the root DNS servers to find out who has that address. So if you have a customer, for example, let's say in London, and you're is making a request for www.example.com, they're going to contact their local ISP's DNS and say who has www.example.com. That ISP needs to still contact an outside DNS server, and so that's where the local POP, that if there's a POP in London, that ISP DNS server just has to contact a local POP in London instead of, for example, in our case, reaching all the way up to San Francisco to say who has www. If that makes sense. So and then the local ISP will cache that for a certain amount of time depending on the TTL. So even though you're using a local ISP's DNS, they still have to reach out and get the answer that they're looking for.
Great. Good answer. Well, that concludes our webcast. Wanted to keep it close to 30 minutes, and appreciate everyone's time in joining us. Thank you so much to Ryan and Jeff, and have a wonderful evening or day, whatever time it is in your time zone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.